guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Gareth from Park Cameras, and of course, today we are talking about the Sony cameras and lenses we've been talking about over the last few weeks. Now, we've done a few different videos, we've done landscape video, portrait, a bit of wildlife, a bit of macro, but a big part of these Sony cameras, and especially for me, is actually video. Now, I shoot video pretty much every day of my life. And pretty much every day of my life, certainly over the last few years, I've been using a Sony camera to do it. Most of the videos on this channel from the last couple of years are shot on a Sony camera with Sony lenses. And there's a reason for that. I love using these cameras for video, which is an interesting situation because up until this year, where we got the A7s III, we haven't had 10-bit video in these cameras. It's all been 8-bit. And for some people, that's a deal breaker. But for me, I actually love the way the footage comes out of these cameras. You know, you've got different options for how you want to shoot it, whether you want to use S-Log2, S-Log3, and then color grade with that. I actually find it incredibly easy to color grade with a standard picture profile. I think it looks good. And like I say, I find the color grading really easy with it, surprisingly easy. People ask me how I color grade some of the video that I put up on this channel and other videos and stuff like that, assuming that it must be S-Log or something like that, but actually a lot of it, I do shoot a bit S-Log, but a lot of it is shot with standard picture profile just because I find it so easy afterwards to color that how I'd like it. Now, of course, the A7s III, probably my favorite camera that I've used across the board. Just probably my favorite camera I've ever used. I'd love to have one. I obviously don't. This is being shot on an A7 III. I'd love to have an A7s III. It offers so much in the way of video, you know, 10-bit video, as we talked about. RAW, if you're shooting with an external monitor. 4K up to 120 frames a second, which fits into my workflow unbelievably well. But I do get really nice performance out of the full HD, 120 frames a second in things like the A7 III, the A7R IV, all that kind of stuff. Now, there's a few reasons why I like using the Sony cameras for video. Image stabilization is one of them. I fell in love with the Sony cameras for video in 2018 with the A7 III. I love the image stabilization. Is it the best in the industry? Maybe not now, but it is still decent, you know, and I always feel I can rely on it to shoot handheld. Pretty much all of the videos I shoot, whether on the channel or any videos at all, including client work, I shoot handheld because I find it easy to do with the Sony cameras and I like the look of it. I like that I can do that. It's easy and quick to be able to do it. And when you're under time pressure or when you need to get things done or when you need to do, you know, 40 different shots with different setups, it's a nice thing to be able to do. And I know I can smooth it out well in post-production as well if there are a couple of sort of bumps and things along the way. I love the way the footage looks just in general. I love the colors, I love all that kind of stuff. I just find it easy to color grade, as I mentioned earlier, even on the standard picture profile. Of course, you've got S-Log though to rely on as well if you want a slightly wider dynamic range, but I find it easy to work with in post-production. You know, whether I'm coloring it, whether I'm sticking it all together, I just think it looks good. The autofocus is a big part of it as well. So even with the A7 III, which doesn't have the eye tracking autofocus in video that you might find on something like the A7R IV or the A7s III, which, by the way, is incredible, is so good. But even on the A7 III, which I'm using now and a lot, I still find the autofocus just incredibly reliable and useful. It's very sticky, you know, it'll stick onto what I want to focus on. I find that so useful when I'm running and gunning a shoot. It takes kind of my thought process out of having to manually focus. Now, I'm probably different to a lot of videographers. I know a lot of videographers who like to manually focus. I don't, I hate it, if I'm honest. I much prefer using good, reliable autofocus, and that is exactly what I have with the Sony cameras. Obviously, like I say, it's even better on the A7R IV and then the A7s III. Oh, with that eye tracking autofocus for video, it's almost like cheating. It's ridiculous. And it means that if you're shooting something, you know, whether it's a short film, an ad, commercial work, if you've got a subject in there, you're going to be focused on the eye constantly. And it works unbelievably well. These cameras are also, you know, reasonably small, reasonably lightweight. You can absolutely stick them on a stabilizer without really any issues at all. It really doesn't take very long to set up. I have the Ronin M, which I love for stabilizer shots. This camera takes, you know, a couple of minutes at most to set up and balance, and then I'm off. It's super easy, but it's light and kind of compact enough that running and gunning is so easy. And then the lenses, right? We haven't even really talked about that, but I use the 24-70 G Master a lot. I love that lens. I think it's such a good video lens. There's something about the way that lens looks that I don't get from any other 24-70. It's just so nice, but there's a whole host of primes, you know, the 35mm f1.4, the Zeiss lens, you know, the 85mm G Master lens, the 50mm, the 135 even gives you some super cinematic kind of looking shots. There's just a lot to work with within the Sony ecosystem. There's a lot of lenses that work so well. The 70-200 f2.8 is a lovely lens to get some nice cinematic shots on. It would take a lot for me to move away from Sony for video, and actually Sony have kind of answered a lot of the questions that people had, and mostly that was around things like 10-bit video, which the A7s Iii has absolutely smashed. It is such a good camera and it's such a step up in terms of video. So it's not like the A7s II and the A7 III, which are very similar in terms of video spec and stuff like that. It is a huge leap up, and it seems really quite future-proofed with stuff like 4K 120, shooting RAW over an external HDMI and stuff like that. If you have any questions about any of the stuff we've been talking about, just pop it down in the comments. I'll get back to you. Video is kind of my passion. I love photography. But video is kind of my passion. I love it so much. So any questions about any of the stuff we've been talking about, pop it down there. There's links to all of the stuff we've been talking about down in the description as well, so you can go and check them out for yourself. You can check out all the other videos in this series as well. I'll pop them down in the description so you can check them out. We've got landscape photography, portrait photography, a bit of wildlife, a bit of macro, all kinds of stuff. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. That really helps out the channel. I will of course see you in the next video, and as always, thanks for watching.